Hi folks, this is Vicar Josh. I'm here today with our super producer Josh Gagel and Phil Rukavina, a manual member and professional lutist? Lutenist.
Yes, that's a very good question to deal with right away.
Yeah, right, get it out.
No one knows what to call a person who plays a lute, but it's lutenist is the most official.
All right, I'm just going to call you friend.
That's good.
That's perfect.
Easy.
Phil, thanks so much for being with us on our show today. This is our first show, and so if things go a little off the rails, I'm going to blame it on you.
That's good. I'll take it with me to the grave.
All right. Well, thanks again for being here. Let's just pop right in. Today we're going to talk about our faith and how that supports us in our vocations. I know a lot of folks here are excited to hear you play. A lot of folks came a month or so ago for
Aging Splendidly.
Aging Splendidly, and it was a packed house. That was so good. That was the first time that I heard you play too.
Oh, really? Okay.
I think so.
Right.
And so I'm excited to bring this to a lot of other folks.
Great. Well, I'm glad to be here and glad to be playing and talking about my vocation.
Okay. All right. Well, why don't you tell us a little bit about that? How does your faith intersect with the music that you make? How does it keep you going? How did you end up here?
Yeah. Well, a circuitous route getting to finding my faith. I mean, like everybody, I think I grew up a Catholic, and then I always found that I always had trouble with, the whole hierarchy concept of being in relationship with God and Jesus, and I read some books, and that made me realize, what really, if you take away all the bells and smells, as they call it, what do you have left of Jesus? And I found out that I found it a more genuine experience when I felt like I was directly talking to God when I needed to, and that God would directly listen to me if he needed to hear me. But wasn't just complaining all the time. So that was that, and getting into music. Well, it's funny for me. Music, it's kind of like an ongoing miracle. There are so many aspects of music that affect me emotionally and intellectually that I feel somehow that it's God speaking when I hear music. Especially, I have to say, especially instrumental music. I mean, it's true in choir music too, but when there's no words and you have your emotions being moved within you, you have to say, well, why am I being moved? Why is it affecting me? Why is that phrase important or beautiful and that one is getting me to another beautiful one? And I realized that it almost is just like, it shows that there's meaning in the universe even without words. Yep. And God's universe, there's meaning in gestures, there's meaning in sound, there's meaning in vibrations of any kind. And it's not something we as human beings can use to communicate, details of things we want to say, but it's how we relate to the world. And as a result, that's why I call it a miracle, because it's like, it just is there and we just kind of accept it. I've never been one who believes that we know music and love music because we heard it in the womb. Maybe it's true, but the detail to which music affects people seems like there's something even deeper in our relationship with music, and it's cool.
Yeah. I heard on an interview, maybe on NPR recently, somebody was talking about how music is one of the only instances where you can have two things occupy the same space. So you can have two sounds. You can't really do that with two images, right? You can't put two hands, but you can have two chords play at the same time. And I wonder, as you were talking, I wonder a little bit if that's part of that communication that you sense.
Yeah, I don't even know if, back in the 16th century, the music I play, there was a philosopher, I can't remember his name right now, but who used to say that the reason music affects people is because someone is touching the strings with their fingers, and that's what they feel is coming through their fingers, and then it's rotating through the air, and then it gets into a person's ears, and so you're basically feeling what that person is feeling.
Yeah.
And you think about it, no, that may or may not be true, but the fact is that no one has come up with a better reason for why it is you get affected by music, how it enters you and like that. So being able to hear two voices at once, or being able to, whatever the things that are going on, that to me is the unknowing of that, is unexplaining of that is really amazing.
It's like being able to hear what somebody's feeling, right?
Right. It's and then as a result, you resonate.
Yeah.
You're like no strings on the lute are sympathetic strings. They all get played.
Yeah.
But in certain violins, you'll have like a hardung or something. You'll have strings that just vibrate along with the other. And when you see, if I played a C, or I played this note, which is a C, you can't see it, but I can see the C string move with it. So it resonates to its own pitch.
Yeah.
And that relationship is magical, it's kind of amazing.
It is. Just before we started recording, we were talking about some similarities that we have with health stuff. So I have ADHD. I talk about it pretty openly, and I just learned that you do as well.
I do, yeah.
And I had mentioned that when I would have particularly rough days, playing my clarinet in school, it was a way to express myself, and it almost felt like a way for me to communicate the things that I couldn't get the words out.
Sure, yeah.
It was a way for me to vocalize whatever I was feeling. I wonder if that's the case that you've experienced something like that too.
Well, at my most calm, and because I do it for work and because I do it a lot, it's hard to say, because there's times when I can have the opposite effect, where I'm just like not in the mood and I'm trying to play something and I can't focus on it because of my ADHD. Yeah. And then I get kind of frustrated, because the better you get at something when you're not doing well, often the more it cuts a little bit. Yep. when you're doing that. But I do say my most contented times is playing in front of an audience when I really know the piece and I'm really feeling comfortable about it. But close to that is just sitting in my studio at home and practicing, just getting into it, and it's like that's the payoff. It isn't fame, it isn't the money for sure. It's that feeling of it's just absolutely beautiful, and it's speaking, so whatever it's saying.
We're not in your practice space.
No, we're not.
This is a pretty nice space, though. I wonder if you would play some of that. Some of the stuff that kind of brings you calm or peace.
Oh, sure.
If you would bring something that something that would put you in the mindset.
Yeah,
what would you share with our listeners?
Yeah, I would do, well, lately I was telling you, I've been playing a lot of baroque music. I'm really into that lately, but for most of my time, I've been more a Renaissance player, which is the period before the Baroque age. And it's the period of music where they call the music is polyphonic, meaning that there is not like in our music, you don't even maybe notice it, but the top voice, the melody is super important, and the bass voice is strongly important because of its supporting, and all the middle voices are kind of just making the chord sound full. But in this music, it's more that all the voices are equal and they all move along. And this is a little riccicate.
Okay.
This is from the Renaissance. This is from early 16th century Italy. And there were virtuosos who played and were paid money to play in court at houses and things, and were things. So, but it's simple. Ricercare means to research, which means I'm just going to be playing something that helps the listener find out where the center of pitch and mode is in the piece. So let's say.
Calming to me.
It's very calming. Renaissance music has got to be one of the more calming musics that there are.
Yeah.
Because they handle dissonance, so the dissonances lead to the consonances, and it kind of pulls you through, but you don't get any real radical dissonances that just come out of nowhere. They're just always incorporated in, and that makes the thread of the music work. And that's one of the beautiful things about it to me.
It's interesting that you bring up the dissonance too, and there's one of the questions I have here is to talk about the tension that you feel between your faith and your work. And I'm wondering,
Yeah.
how does that get expressed? How do you deal with it?
All sorts of ways. I get mad and yell, and I get I tell God, "Why the heck are you being such a jerk to me?" When things aren't good, and it has mostly to do with the ADHD issue. I think it's the root, because the problem with focus. I mean, you can imagine an instrument like this needs a ton of focus.
Can you take a minute, Phil? I don't mean to derail you.
Go.
I was just thinking, I wonder how many of our folks might tune in and not know the difference between a lute and a guitar.
Yeah, sure.
I wonder when you talk about that instrument.
They actually are not related, which is, a lot of people think, well, they must be because they're both string. But the lute precedes the modern guitar. The modern guitar came out of the early Romantic music era. So we're talking about, 1780s, 1790s. The lute comes from way back in the 14th century, 1500s. And then it was the dominant instrument that was like the guitar of its time. But it's different. It's tuned slightly differently. A guitar is very modern in that all the bracing inside the instrument is really designed to project sound. Where with a lute, it was designed kind of based on theories that may or may not have been accurate. So the Pythagorean bracing system inside of a lute, like this lute doesn't have what they call a saddle. Like on a guitar, you see the strings go over this white bar and then go down and tie off. Yep. And that means that when the string is plucked, the sound is pushed right into the top of the guitar. And so it's very direct, very resonant. But the lute doesn't have that. So the sound is always somewhat like it's coming from somewhere else.
Yeah, that's the gentleness.
And that's the gentleness. And so if you hear when I stop, there's a lot of sound just hanging around. The guitar doesn't have that so much. It does have it, but it's more directly the tones of the strings. This, it's kind of like a wash of sound. Wait. It's just a wash of sound that just kind of rumbles behind you all the time, which gives it a sense of place, a sense of sound, directness. Sound.
That was one of the things that I liked about this room, the space that we chose, is that it does seem to project the sound.
It does. We did the Lute Cafe here for years. Before you came, we had a program. I used to come in once a month with different friends who play the lute, and we would do performances in this room.
Oh, yeah?
For like 10 years, yeah.
Oh, my goodness.
And then we moved somewhere else, and then that fell apart, and then I was too old to keep going. So. But going back to the ADHD thing, and how do I struggle with, God or not struggle with God? First of all, when things are going well, there is no doubt in my mind that God is in the room, that love is in the room. And it's a feeling of control, agreement. I mean, it is about harmony, which society seems to lack a lot of these days. And so in the music, there's the harmony. And at the same time, if something gets in the way of that beautiful harmony, it doesn't tend to be neutral. It tends to be dark. I mean, beauty is not, it's not offset by neutrality. It's like, so when things aren't going well, like for instance, I have trouble focusing and I'm making a lot of mistakes, I sometimes get very irritable. And then I have a conversation with God that goes a different way. But it's funny because I think always in life, at least with me in life, no matter what comes my way, somehow it's me, and that I have a place in the world, and struggling with that, well, unless it's all the time. I mean, I can see where if someone's always depressed or always struggling, or things never go right, that's a different thing, but it's a part of what I struggle with to play. And so it makes when things go well really great, and that does happen. So.
Yeah. Is there a particular piece of music or anything that you can remember, a performance that kind of brings that back to mind, that kind of expresses that tension? We played the calm piece.
Yeah, most of the music from the Renaissance and even the Baroque is very structured and organized, so it rarely sounds like chaos in the music itself. Mm-hmm. That wasn't one of their interests. Their interest wasn't in experimental serial 12-tone music, something very out there. Most of these guys wrote because they were being paid to write pieces for the church, the Catholic Church at that. Well, and then some people don't know this, but Martin Luther was himself a very good lute player. And I
didn't know that.
Yeah, he was known for being a lute player as well as all the other things he's known for even more. But when he was creating the Lutheran Church, what became the Lutheran Church, he would set music. Music was hugely important to him, and he would set music using his lute. He would sit at home, I think, and play and put words to different tunes.
Yeah.
And, and so many of the pieces, or several of the pieces in the Lutheran Book of Worship, you'll see names of Renaissance composers having written the piece, and then it was texted by somebody who was of his era, of Luther's era, and Luther knew, like Gastoldi. There's a number of pieces in the Lutheran Book of Worship by Gastoldi. So there you go. So it was so music has an incredibly religious heritage in every faith, not just in Catholic faith.
Can you share something with us?
I don't have anything that's religious. Let me see. Because this music was all written, well, it's funny, can I say something?
Yeah.
This music was written by a guy who was one of my favorite composers. And his name is Francesco da Milano. So he's Francesco of Milan. But he was a virtuoso and very famous in his own day. And he worked in the court of the Medici Pope, Leo X. Leo X was a debauched pope. He had kids. He was not, and I'm not saying this to diss Catholics, but even people in the Catholic faith know that there was this era,
there was a time
when things were not as holy as maybe they should have been. But Francesco was great, and since they had a lot of money, they would have really great musicians play at their court, because it was like a court. Mm-hmm. And so this music is religious in that way, but it's never. But Francesco, we're not even sure if he might have been Jewish, because none of his music is. Like, he didn't write masses or something like that. So I'm trying to think if there's a piece by Francesco I can play this morning. Like this. Let's see if I can do this one.
That is perfect.
It's pretty close.
That's terrific.
See, that's what AD did. I mean, that's kind of this thing of, and I don't know if you've had that experience, but if you're not warmed up and really focused, you sit down and it's like, it's all coming at you. And that's one of the things I spend a great deal of time doing is learning to focus so that once I'm in a program performing, I'm in the performance and I'm not in the world of talking and interacting. So that's kind of an interesting phenomenon with it. So.
I'm glad that you brought it up, and I'm glad that folks that listening to this outside are not going to hear that we went through a couple of times with that. So I hope it's okay that I say it.
But yes, I did.
We were talking about this at the beginning, before we got started, and I wonder if you could just take, as we start to close up, I wonder if you could just take a minute to talk about some of the frustrations that you experience with ADHD or ADD and your performance, your life as a performer, as a professional performer, and then what do you lean into? What do you draw on to move you through that? And how does it affect you?
Well, I think, first of all, you have to have a deep passion for something to work on it, even when you have a kind of condition that affects that directly. And so one of the things about ADD or ADHD, both similar problems, is that they say that people who have that problem have difficulty with focusing on the subject at hand. It's like part of you is always got the radar open for the whole world. And
That's my experience.
Yeah, and it's like a defense mechanism, and they don't know exactly what it comes from. But when you're actually playing music, it's a detriment because you need to know the next note that's coming, and you need to know that when something doesn't go right, you keep going, and then it just evens out, and that's the reality of the world. Perfection isn't in art. So I struggle very much with getting getting things started. Like at night, like when I play concerts at night, it's always the first or second piece that I have to really ride the rodeo pony with my attention span. And then once I settle down, I go, oh, these people are not out to hate me, or whatever the different energizing moments you have. Then it's like I'm fine and I'm just playing and I'm in my room and it's great and I love doing it. But many times in life, like for instance this morning, you get up, you talk, you pick up the lute, and none of that focus gear is in place. Mm-hmm. And so you have to actually kind of burn it into place again, and then you go on. But you don't get to do that when you're, like a lot of times I'll play a solo in a concert that's an ensemble concert. And when that solo moment comes, it's like you don't have the equipment going to do a solo. You've been playing and listening to everybody else and working with them, which I'm very good at, I have to say. I'm a good accompanist because I read people when they're doing it.
Yep, and that's one of the superpowers of ADHD, I think.
Yeah,
is you learn how to read a room and to read people so that
you give them so that you're socially accepted, right?
But
unfortunately, the problem is that you don't get to utter as much honest feeling as you might, because you feel like, I'm not sure I know what's going on because I'm not able to focus enough to know. Like, I don't know about you, but when I first got diagnosed with ADHD or ADD, they put me on a medication, and I read a book for the first time where I actually read the book. And this is when I'm in my 40s. Because before that I would read, and then my mind would go off into some thought process, and then I would not be reading, and then all of a sudden my eyes would keep going, and then I'd start to read again when I got back into the book. And as a result, I never really got the book. And that's really difficult when you're in school and trying to learn something. So it's the same with this. It is probably my main point of conflict, and more than once has been a point when I've gone, God, why have you done this? Why did you put this nail right in the middle of my skill set? Because I'm definitely want to be a musician so bad that I still practice every day, and I'm getting to be 70. So there's an earnestness about playing music and loving it, but that's one of the struggles, I think.
That's the beauty of the passion, though, right? It's the thing that you're willing to pay the cost for to do the thing that you love. Right. And I love that it's music for you.
Yeah.
As you're describing it, that resonated with me so much because as I describe this, the way that I experience the world to others, I said it's kind of like you've got, like I'm juggling 10 balls, and at any point, all of those balls have good ideas. They're all related to things, but I'm just going to grab one and say, okay, I hope this one fits.
Right.
And it might or it might not.
Good.
And so it's a struggle sometimes to get through. I found when I was a young person playing music, the way that I would deal with that is I would just memorize the music.
Right.
I have all of that music from middle school and high school still in my memory bank.
Yeah.
I wonder what else could fit in there.
Yeah, you wonder if you could get rid of it.
Yeah, right.
I used to play in the bars when I was a kid, and I have 4 hours of songs in my head, of lyrics.
Yep.
And I still can quote a lot of lyrics to music, because and it's completely useless to me now, but there it is. But that's what's funny, because in this business, when you're in the music business I'm in, you do a different show every week. You can't just go out and play, the same concert every night like you can if you go to a bar and you're in a bar and you can sing the same songs. It doesn't work that way. So you can't rely on your memory unless you have a photographic memory, and I do not.
Yeah.
So I always have to work on relating the music on the page into the instrument, and that's a challenge when you're struggling with ADD.
It is. Yep.
Yeah.
What is like a go-to piece for you? If you find that you're in one of those moments,
right,
and you're like, all right, I gotta get on track. What's a piece that you can think of or that you play that you say, all right, this, or even a scale or a warm up, something that gives you the confidence to get back in.
Yeah, it's funny because at different times in life I'm into different things, and then I'm playing that music a lot, and so it's the go-to piece, or it might be the go-to piece. But there's this little piece I play. I don't know if I can do it. It's a piece that I will just play. And it happens to be fun because it's at this time of year, because it's a piece that imitates a bagpipe, or a little bagpipe, and during Christmas the shepherds would play their bagpipes while they were watching their sheep for fun, but during Christmas they would come down into the towns and play in the streets for money during the Christmas time, and so it's around Christmas time, so that's what it is, and it's just an interesting thing, but that kind of thing, but it wouldn't necessarily get me warmed up or into playing Bach or playing Weiss or some Baroque person. It's more, that's a different style of music, so. But I love just kind of noodling on it. So.
All right. My last question for you.
Yeah.
What's one thing that you wish people understood better about music and the connection between music and faith? What is it?
Well, for me, like I said earlier in the talk, music is like an ongoing miracle for me. It's like it proves to me that there is meaning in the universe that is not meaning meant solely for human beings. It's just seeing the beauty of structure and design. What was the first part of the question?
What's something you wish people understood?
Yeah, understood. I wish people understood that if you put time into listening to different music, it's amazing how you will eventually fall in love with that music. I sometimes think that people kind of turn on the radio to anything that they know, and that's their experience of music, and it's certainly a valid and important one. But like, I listen to classical music, and it's kind of the antithesis of what's going on in music today, because it's very involved and it's melodic more than rhythmic most of the time, or much of the time. But I think that I wish people would listen to music they're not accustomed to long enough to find out that it's cool and that there is a reason that it's neat. Because it just opens the door. It's like speaking a language. If you speak 2 languages, learning the third one isn't as hard. Yeah. And then you can go on and you can say things in different languages that might be better ways to say things than just in English. And in music, if you like all of a sudden went, wow, I hate to say this, but I really like that Mozart, or I really like, country music, and I never listened to it before. You find out that it's not just a little thin strip coming out of a radio, but that itself is a doorway into a much bigger world that can bring you a lot of joy and happiness. And if you're looking for joy and happiness, and you listen to music long enough to understand what it's saying, I guarantee you will find joy and happiness.
Sometimes I'm not just looking for joy and happiness. Sometimes I'm like, you know what? I'm not feeling good. Right. I want to get some of that. Some of those feelings out.
I know. I'm that way too, and I think that's a different kind of joy and happiness.
Yeah.
But just when you what do they call that? When you just you just rock out, or you just scream and yell at the top of your... I mean, believe me, if you're a lute player, when you get into, rock and roll country music, you're really into it, because it's like the exact opposite of what I do. And it's like, that muscle needs to be exercised.
Oh, that's hilarious.
So you go to concerts and see things that are totally different than what I do. So I'm like that.
Phil, I was thinking about this before the Lutefisk dinner. I was thinking, you and I should get together and form a little group. We call it Lutefish.
Lutefish.
Yep, okay, and it's the idea is that it's a cross, sort of a hybrid between the Baroque and the Renaissance, and then bluegrass and hip hop of today.
Okay, yeah, all right. There's got to be a market for that,
So what's next for you, Phil? What's coming down the pike? Any projects?
See. I got several projects going. I've been working with the Bach Society. I play with the Bach Society of Minnesota, and there's this program they're doing called Out of the Box. Excuse the pun.
Love it. Yep. I love a good pun.
Yeah, I know, it's a good pun. And anyway, we've been doing music, speaking of, we've been doing Baroque music combined with hip hop.
No way. I told you there's a market for it.
Yeah, there is. And we actually have sold out a lot of concerts. We've played it around the state a fair amount. And it's amazing. But then we just did a concert which was called Baroque Tango. And so we work with this group in town that's a very famous, actually plays internationally, They played Astor Piazzolla music, tango music on instruments, the bandoneon or whatever they call the squeeze box, and they have a great pianist, great violinist and stuff, and they play tango, and the Bach Society, like 6 of us, will play Corelli or something, and then we'll go into tango and we'll play the tango on our instruments. I love it. And so that's coming up in the winter months, and we're doing more of that. That's kind of outstate stuff. But just all sorts of different, just did a show with Maria Jetty, the soprano from around here. We did a show for the Lyra Baroque Orchestra, where we did kind of a mix of Renaissance Baroque, and started the show with chestnuts roasting on the open fire, ended the show with Have Yourself a Merry Little Christmas, where I play jazz lute.
Lute.
So I'm doing a lot of different kind of hybrid things these days, it seems like.
Can you play us some jazz lute right now, or is that out?
Let me see. I don't know. I gotta go and see if I can.
I was interested in hearing. Yeah.
Oh, you know what I have here is actually, this is like the accompaniment. Chestnuts roasting on an open fire, cowgirls flipping up your nose, whatever it is. Yuletide carols being sung by a choir, and folks dressed up like Eskimos. Everybody knows a turkey and some mistletoe. I'm not a singer, so I won't go any further than that. But so that kind of stuff. So yeah, kind of combining.
All right. Where can folks go to learn more about you and what you do?
They go on my website. If they just went to philrukavina.com. philrukavina.com. Right. 2 L's in Philip. I've got things I've played that are on the performance page, and just information. I have a lot of CDs out over the years, so they can go there and find out about them. All
right. Phil, what's one thing you want to leave our audience with? What's the last thing you want to say to folks here at Emmanuel?
To Emmanuel, I'd say I really love playing the 10 o'clock Christmas service. The little one that happens where we get a little lute music in the prelude, and it's a warm, wonderful feeling with candle lights. And because for me, I see God and the Lord most clearly in gathered people, and people who are gathering, especially when they're gathering to question and wonder together about the whole world and existence and what it's about. And on Christmas night, when there's all the hope in the world present, having an intimate moment with people you love is it. And I
bring it.
That's why I love it. So there you go.
That's such an important thing.
Yeah.
Folks, thanks for joining us today. This has been Vicar Josh Gagel, our super producer, and our very special guest, Phil Rukavina.
Thank you.
Check out his website, philiprukavina.com with 2 L's, and we hope to see you here at 10 p.m. on Christmas Eve.
And I wish you a great success with your podcast.
Thank you so much.
Efforts.
All right.
Okay.
Take care.
Thank you.